Hey there. Welcome to the Healthy Mind channel, where I share true stories packed with surprising turns. If you like what you hear in this video, please hit that subscribe button and give a thumbs up. It really helps keep our little corner of YouTube growing. All right, let's jump into the story. I've been swinging by Chester's place for ages, probably since we were 12 or maybe even younger. His house always felt like a second home to me. Snacks stocked in the pantry, video games stacked in the basement, and laid-back dinners with his family. His mom, Gloria Thompson, was just that warm, welcoming mom figure, always making you feel at ease, but never someone I gave much thought to beyond that. She was just Chester's mom, you know? Kind, friendly, but nothing more. That is, until things changed recently. After her divorce from Mr. Thompson, about 4 months back, everything shifted. There wasn't some big, messy blowout. No yelling or drama. One day, his dad's car just wasn't in the driveway anymore, and Chester just shrugged and said, "They're over." Since then, Gloria's been different, not just down or quiet. It's like she's rediscovering herself, or at least trying to figure out who she is now. One Saturday, Chester shot me a text asking if I could help him clean out the garage. His dad had left behind a ton of boxes, old tools, and random junk, and Gloria wanted it all cleared out. I figured, yeah, no sweat, I'll help out. When I showed up, though, Chester wasn't even there, caught up at work, running late. Gloria answered the door, and I swear, the way she looked at me that day was different. She flashed her usual smile, but there was something new in her eyes, something I couldn't quite place. Her hair was loosely tied back, and she was in a simple black t-shirt and jeans, nothing fancy. But man, she looked good, better than I'd ever noticed before. She seemed caught off guard, like she wasn't expecting me. "Jorge, you've really grown up, haven't you?" she said, her voice warm but with a curious edge. I chuckled, brushing it off with a, "Yeah, guess time does that." We headed to the garage together, and Chester rolled in not long after. We got to work, hauling boxes off shelves, stacking old paint cans, and sorting through years of clutter. It was hot, dusty, and felt like a workout. After a bit, Gloria came out with glasses of lemonade for us. When she handed me mine, she said, "Watch yourself with those heavy boxes. Jorge, you're strong, but don't push it too hard." Her smile lingered a little too long, and that look in her eyes, it wasn't just motherly. It felt curious, maybe even like she was sizing me up. Chester got a call halfway through and said he had to run something over to his girlfriend's place. He tossed me the garage key, said he'd be back in an hour, and took off. I thought about heading out too, but just as I was packing up, Gloria came back out. "Don't leave yet," she said, her voice firm but soft, almost like it wasn't up for debate. I made some fresh iced tea. "Come sit for a bit." We ended up on the back patio, just the two of us. It was peaceful. No cars, no dogs barking, just the breeze rustling the trees and the faint clink of ice in her glass. She started talking first, opening up about how quiet a house felt now, how strange it was to sleep alone, how she'd catch herself talking in empty rooms, forgetting no one was there to hear her. I didn't know what to say, so I just listened, nodding along. Then she looked right at me and said, "You've always had this calm, gentle vibe, Jorge, even when you were a kid." I gave an awkward smile, mumbling something like, thanks, I guess." That's when it happened. She reached across the table and touched my hand. Not a quick pat, not an accident. Her fingers brushed mine and stayed there for a moment. I glanced down at her hand, then up at her face. She didn't pull away. Her expression was soft, calm, almost impossible to read, but it didn't feel uneasy. I froze, then let out a nervous laugh and stood up, saying, "I should probably head out. Chester will be back soon." She didn't argue, just looked at me and said, "Thanks for listening, Jorge." That meant a lot. I nodded, walked to my car, and the whole drive home, I could still feel the warmth of her touch on my hand. I kept replaying that moment over and over, torn between feeling spooked and wondering what might come next. The next few days were strange. I tried to shake off what happened with Gloria, but it wasn't easy. I'd been to her house a million times, and it never felt like that. Her touch, the way she looked at me, the way she spoke, it stuck with me, not just the physical part, but the whole vibe. It wasn't like the usual chit-chat we'd have when I'd come over to hang with Chester. She was different, and it was messing with my head. Chester, though, was his usual loud, oblivious self, texting me about random stuff like nothing had changed. But every time I drove by their house on my way to work, I'd glance at Gloria's car in the driveway, and my mind would start racing again. A few days later, I was back at Chester's, helping him tinker with his car. Nothing unusual, just guy stuff. We were chatting about his weekend plans when Gloria walked in with a tray of sandwiches, like she always did when we were hanging out. She smiled at both of us, but there was something in her smile, like she knew something Chester didn't. "Hey, guys," she said. "Need anything else before I head out? I've got a couple errands to run." I nodded, not thinking much of it. But when she turned to leave, she paused right by me, close enough that I could feel her presence. Her hand brushed my shoulder, light but deliberate, like she was reassuring me, or something more. She didn't rush off like usual. Instead, she stood there for a beat, then said, "See you later, Jorge," her eyes locking with mine just a moment too long. I froze again. That wasn't a normal goodbye. There was a weight to it, a tension I couldn't ignore. My pulse kicked up, and I started second-guessing everything. Was I reading too much into this? Chester, glued to his phone, didn't notice a thing, too caught up in his new car parts. I wondered if I should say something to him. But what would I even say? It felt weird, but as Gloria left the room, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was happening, like she was sending me a signal without saying it outright. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, heard her voice, felt her hand on mine. The way she looked at me in the garage, the way she lingered by me, it played on a loop in my head. I wanted to chalk it up to nothing, but it was too vivid, too real. Something was shifting, something I wasn't prepared for, and I had no idea what to do about it. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Chester asking if I was still coming over that evening. I stared at my phone, hesitating. Going back to his house meant seeing Gloria again, and just the thought of it made my gut twist. I couldn't decide what was worse, facing her and figuring out what was really going on between us, or dodging the whole thing, pretending that moment on the patio never happened. Deep down, I knew something was brewing, something I couldn't steer or stop. Every time Gloria popped into my head, I felt this weird mix of nerves and excitement, like I was standing on the edge of something big. I'd never been in a mess like this before, and I had no clue whether to lean into it or shut it down. A few days after that awkward moment in the garage, I got a text from Gloria. It was short, just asking if I'd be free later that evening. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe she needed help with something, or maybe Chester had asked her to reach out. I shot back a quick reply, saying I was free after 8. Her response came fast, but it hit different. "How about 9? Just for a bit. I'd love to catch up." It sounded casual, but then it hit me. She was asking me to come over, not Chester, not anyone else. Just me. I sat there, staring at my phone, my mind spinning. What was she getting at? Was she just looking to chat? Or was there something more? I typed out a sure and hit send, but my stomach was in knots. That evening, I pulled up to her house and stood at the door, my finger hovering over the doorbell. For the first time in years, I was nervous, part excited, part dreading what might happen. Gloria opened the door, and there was that smile again, soft but warmer, like it was pulling me in. "Come on in, Jorge," she said, her voice so quiet it almost felt intimate. Instead of heading to the living room where Chester and I usually hung out, she led me to the kitchen. She was fixing a simple dinner, pasta and a salad, nothing fancy. I sat at the table, feeling her eyes on me as she moved around, setting out plates and glasses. "You want some?" she asked, glancing over her shoulder while grabbing a glass from the cupboard. I shook my head, suddenly hyper-aware of myself. "Nah, I ate earlier, but thanks," I said, my voice tighter than I meant to be. She nodded but didn't say much else, and the silence that settled between us was heavy, like we were both tiptoeing around something unsaid. Finally, she set a glass of wine in front of me and sat across the table. Her face was hard to read, but her eyes kept flicking between me and the table, like she was wrestling with words she couldn't quite get out. I've been thinking about the other day, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't want you to think I'm making things weird. I needed to talk, about everything. The air felt thick, charged with something I couldn't name. I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Her expression was almost desperate, like she was waiting for me to make a move, say something, anything. I finally managed to speak, though I wasn't sure if I was saying the right thing. I don't think it's weird, Gloria. I mean, it's just us here, right? No one else. The second the words left my mouth, I regretted them. They sounded off, too forward maybe, but it was too late to backtrack. Her eyes widened for a split second, and I swear I saw something spark in her gaze. Something deliberate. I know, she said softly, leaning in just a bit. That's why I wanted you here. I needed to talk to you. Since the divorce, I felt so alone, Jorge, like I'm lost. You're one of the few people who actually listens, who really sees me. Her words hung there heavy, and I felt this weight settle in my chest. I didn't know what to do with it. Should I comfort her? Admit her words made me uneasy? Or just nod and let it slide? Before I could figure out, she leaned forward a little more, her hand resting on the table, inches from mine. There was a pause in her eyes, like she was debating her next move. Then she spoke, her voice shaky. I know I'm older than you, Jorge. I know I'm Chester's mom. But that doesn't change how I feel. My stomach dropped, and I could barely catch my breath. My mind was racing. Everything I'd been dodging, everything I didn't want to face, was right there in front of me. I was lost, more confused than I'd ever been. Her words kept echoing in my head. I know I'm your friend's mom, but that doesn't change how I feel. Part of me wanted to spill everything. How I was feeling something too. How it wasn't just sympathy on her end. But the rational part of my brain was screaming that this was a terrible idea, a line I shouldn't cross. I left her house that night feeling heavy, my thoughts a jumbled mess. I liked Gloria, respected her, but she was Chester's mom. She was supposed to be off limits. That's what I'd always told myself. But now, nothing felt clear anymore. For the next couple of days, I tried to act normal, hung out with Chester, went to work, kept my head down. But nothing felt right. I couldn't stop replaying the way she looked at me, the way her hand brushed mine when she handed me the wine. There was something between us, something impossible to ignore. I wasn't used to this. With crushes in the past, things were simple, clear signals, clear boundaries. But this was a whole different beast. Gloria was different, and it was throwing me off. Chester and I were back in the garage a few days later, messing with his car again, when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled my phone out, expecting a work text or something mundane, but my heart skipped when I saw Gloria's name. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the screen, unsure if I could handle reading it. But I opened it anyway. Jorge, I know things are messy right now, but I'd love to talk again when you've got a minute. I stared at the words, my mind racing. She was leaving the door open, but for what? Was she trying to backtrack, maybe apologize, or was she pushing forward with this strange, unspoken thing between us? My chest tightened with that familiar mix of nerves and uncertainty. I knew I couldn't dodge her forever. One way or another, I had to face this. The next day, after work, I made up my mind to head to her place. I had no clue what I'd say or how I'd act, but I couldn't keep pretending nothing had happened. I needed answers, or at least some kind of clarity. I rolled up to her house just before 9 p.m., same as last time, and when I rang the doorbell, that wave of nerves hit me hard, like I was stepping into something bigger than I could handle. Gloria opened the door, but her usual warm smile was gone. Her face was serious, almost like she was waiting for me to break the ice. "Hey," she said softly. "Thanks for coming. I was hoping we could just talk. I don't want things to be weird." I nodded, my throat tight, and mumbled, "Yeah, of course." We settled in the living room, but it felt different. There was this invisible gap between us, wider than before. I could tell she was holding something back. And honestly, so was I. We were both dancing around this tension, scared to cross some line we couldn't even define. She broke the silence first. "I've been thinking a lot about what I said the other night," she started, her voice quiet but steady. I don't want to make you uncomfortable or put you in a tough spot, but I can't pretend I don't feel what I feel. I'm not expecting you to feel the same, but I needed to be honest. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. This wasn't just small talk anymore. She was laying it all out, raw and real, and it was a lot to take in. I struggled to find words. Gloria, I don't know what to say. I admitted, my voice shaky. I'm just confused. I don't know what's going on here or what I'm supposed to do with this. She nodded slowly like she got it. I understand, Jorge. I don't want to mess with your head. But I also can't act like nothing's changed. You're a great guy, and I'm not asking for anything, but I had to tell you how I feel. There it was, out in the open. My whole body felt like it was locked in place. Part of me wanted to tell her I felt it too, that I couldn't stop thinking about her either. But another part was screaming to bolt, to get out before this got any messier. I was torn, stuck in this impossible spot. Finally, I managed to speak, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what this means. Gloria, I'm trying to wrap my head around it, but I just can't. She looked at me, her eyes soft and understanding, and for a moment, I saw the Gloria I'd always known, Chester's mom, strong and steady. But now, she seemed vulnerable, just as lost as I was. We don't have to sort it all out tonight, she said quietly. I just wanted you to know where I stand. And I want you to feel like you can talk to me, no matter what. I didn't know how to respond, didn't know what came next. The air was thick, like a fog I couldn't navigate, but I knew we couldn't keep circling this forever. Something had to give. When I showed up at her house that night, the tension was palpable, like a storm cloud hanging over us. Gloria was on the couch, legs tucked under her, watching me like she was waiting for me to make sense of it all. Jorge, she said softly, thanks for coming. I know I've made this more complicated than it needs to be. I nodded, feeling the weight of everything, confusion, fear, and this undeniable pull toward her. I had to be real, for both our sakes. I've been trying to push down how I feel about you. I started, my heart racing but my voice steady. But the truth is, Gloria, I feel it too. I don't know how it happened, but I can't stop thinking about you. She didn't say anything at first, just looked at me, her expression softening like she was taking in my words. I've been thinking about it too, Jorge, she finally said, her voice low. But I don't want us to do something we'll both regret. I don't want you to feel pressured into anything you're not ready for. I shook my head, standing there, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. I don't want to hurt Chester or wreck our friendship, I said. But I also can't keep living in this limbo, not knowing what this is. There was a long pause, and I could see the struggle in her eyes. She didn't want to make this call any more than I did, but we both knew we had to face the truth. Finally, she stood up and walked over to me, her movements deliberate, like she'd made up her mind. She placed a hand on my arm and looked me square in the eye. I don't want to make this harder than it is, Jorge, she said, and I don't want to pull you into something that'll hurt us both. Maybe the best thing is to leave this where it is. We can both move on. Her words hit like a gut punch. Part of me had held out hope, even just a flicker, that there might be a way forward. But standing there with her so close, it was clear we'd reached the end of the road. I took a deep breath, my mind spinning with everything I'd been carrying. You're right, I said quietly. I think this is the best call for both of us. She nodded, and for a moment we just stood there, the silence heavy but not angry, just a shared understanding that this was the right choice. She stepped back and gave me a small, bittersweet smile. I'm glad we could talk this out. Jorge, I value you, and I value what we have. I hope we can move past this. I didn't know what the future held, but in that moment, it felt like the right decision, even if it wasn't easy. As I turned to leave, her voice stopped me. Jorge, she said softly, I'm glad we had this talk. I hope we both find some peace, whatever that looks like. I turned back, gave her a small smile, and said, Me too, Gloria. Me too. Walking out into the night, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't a win, and it didn't feel good, but it was closure. No more questions, no more confusion, just a choice made. Maybe, just maybe, We both had a shot at moving forward.